Yes. All right. We did pretty well there. All right. My name is Rich Lennon, and I'm the Simple Real Estate Investor. And I am on my journey to give back on Facebook Live every Tuesday and Thursday. And Jay is producing behind me, and we're getting better every week. We legit had a live introduction there. Like, we had a little picture there. So, Jay, thank you very much. And yeah, we're getting better. We're having fun. I'm not taking ourselves too seriously. All right, so I keep watching my videos. I keep telling myself I got to go faster. I got to get through more stuff quicker. And so as my camera jumps all around, I'm going to try to do that tonight. So if you have some questions or comments, like, hit me up. Like, hit me some questions. Actually, with this new platform, I actually have the ability to invite you in, and you can even do video conferencing. Like, we can talk to you and you can ask a question, right? So that would save me a lot, because then I wouldn't have to talk the whole time, and I'm sure everybody would appreciate that. All right, so I just kind of want to talk about, kind of getting through August, right? So a lot of the July data is coming in about the real estate investing market, the real estate market in general. And I always kind of like to talk about those things. As a real estate investor, you have to be knowledgeable. You have to understand what's going to happen. You have to put yourself in front of progress. You have to put yourself in front of that economic cycle, right? And that's what we're trying to do. That's why we try to educate ourselves. And that's why we're here tonight, right? So, all right. So I want to talk about, right now, it is the end of August. And like I said, we're getting July data in. And we're really starting for the first time to see some signs of the tipping in the market, right? So I'm sure that every real estate investor is going out and listening to people talk about it. And some people think the economy is great, and some people think the economy is maybe in a little bit of trouble. I'm one of those people who think that the economy is currently smoking hot right now, right? The stock market's crushing it. The real estate investing business and the real estate selling business is just off the tracks right now, and everything is great. But we're kind of looking for that euphoric period, right? So 2009, 2008, 2009, you could really, with the data, you could see euphoria in the market, and you could have predicted the real estate crash, but most people kind of ignored it. So we really want to stay focused on that and say, like, what are the indicators? What am I looking at? Like, when is the crash coming? We always want to be involved. Okay, so this month, well, rather July, because that's the data we're getting. So for the first time really since the pandemic, we've really seen inventory come back. And that makes sense, right? A lot of the localities and a lot of the governments are starting to lighten up on what people are allowed to do. And people are starting to feel more comfortable with the coronavirus. People start feeling more comfortable having people in their house, more comfortable about going into someone else's house. So what we're seeing is the pent-up inventory, which people were afraid to put on the market really through most of 2020, has begun to come back to the market, right? So one of the reasons that we've had such a smoking hot market, basic econ 101, the price equals a combination of supply and demand, right? So when there is little supply and high demand, prices are up, and that's exactly what's going on now. Since 2008, we've had low supply anyway in the United States, but particularly since COVID, it's really just shrank, right? So we saw like 25% decrease in supply. And so while demand wasn't quite as strong, it still drove prices up as a result, right? Just basic economics. But we're starting to see the beginning of the shift. We're starting to see where that pent-up inventory is starting to come back on the market, right? Nothing to be panicked about. You'll still feel that this is still one of the hottest markets in the country that we've seen in a long time. Like, I'm here in the Richmond market. We're very hot right now, but we're starting to see that the supply is increasing. So for the first time, so July, the supply was up something like 6%, right? So where we had a decrease in supply since March through the coronavirus, when typically we would have seen an increase in supply, right? It's the summer market or spring market. Everybody brings their house to market. We should have seen an increase. Instead, we saw a decrease. No one wanted to sell their house. They didn't want someone to come in. We're seeing that turn, right? So an increase of 6% in July on seller inventory means that the supply of real estate might be changing, and that pent-up supply is going to increase, right? By the way, just worth noting, we're still down 6% year over year. So it's not like all of a sudden there's a ton of inventory on the market. We're just starting to see an indicator. It's just something we should pay attention to, not something we should make decisions about. Right. So then let's look at demand and some of the things that are happening in demand. So the July numbers for demand came out. And so when I talk about demand, I'm talking about two specific things. Number one is the ability to get a loan. And the number one factor there, I'm going to say, is unemployment. Right. So we're going to look at the unemployment numbers to understand what the demand is. Right. If unemployment is high, if people are uncertain about their jobs, they're not likely to go out and buy a house. So unemployment is a huge driver of demand. Right. Another driver of demand is okay. What the heck? My other driver of demand. Okay, yeah, it's liquidity of the banks and the banks being willing to loan money, right? So let's look at those and break them down each one. So first of all, let's talk about unemployment. So unemployment in July was down a little bit, so down to like 10.2%. So still at record highs of unemployment in the United States, and so unemployment is very real. Now, I think it's also worth noting in that 10.2 unemployment rate, there's a couple things that aren't being considered. One is that it's like 5 million people that are being furloughed and are likely not to come back to employment. And those numbers are left out of unemployment. And so another 5 million people is the people that have totally left the workforce. So we probably have an additional 10 million people that are unemployed. So like, even though the official unemployment number is like 10.2, the real number is something like 16% or 17% unemployment. And it's not just the unemployment number. In July, over 30 million Americans took some type of subsidy from the government. So 30 million Americans out of a workforce of like 120 million or 125 million, something really close to that. So we're seeing over 20% of the workforce taking some type of government subsidy, right? And so that is going to hugely affect demand, right? So if unemployment by the time we get to the spring are going to be at, quite frankly, historic highs, like, not back to the 25% depression real numbers, but certainly bigger than the last recession that we went to, you're going to see significant unemployment numbers. And as a result, you're going to see not only the people that were going to buy a loan that now, or going to buy a house that can no longer buy a house because we're no longer experiencing like 3% unemployment numbers, you're going to see a large decrease in demand because of that unemployment. Not just the ones that are out of work, but the ones who fear they might go out of work and are reluctant to make life decisions, right? And so the other one that is, I think, really significant now, and a lot of people who are active in the market, I'm very active in my Richmond market. I sell a lot of property, so very intimately familiar with the lending process and the selling process. And I have to tell you that loans have been tougher on the retail side. And so not loans for me, they don't really affect my business directly, other than ultimately if I'm buying a home and selling it to a retail buyer, whether it's a fix and flip or maybe I've held it for a rental for a long period of time or whatever. So I need that retail buyer. Well, the banks are really tightening up. And some banks are, a fair amount of banks have stopped doing the 20-year commercial loans. If I have time, I might talk about the Burr model a little bit later on. But you're seeing like a real pressure, a real pain point on people that had good credit, 600 credit, 650 credit. But we're literally seeing deals fall apart at the table. And we're seeing things like same day unemployment checks. So someone comes in to sell the house, or excuse me, someone comes in to buy a house, and literally at the table, the day of the table, the lender is going to call the employer to make sure they're still employed. So the banks are getting tight and restrictions are being greater. Jay, did you pop in here? Jay might have popped in here. Jay's my producer. He's over here starting to keep me in check. All right, there's Jay. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Rich. Sorry about the video. It's just probably not the pleasant sight, so that's why I just uploaded the picture.
Okay. You got a question for me?
Yes, so I do have some questions.
Okay.
People, we received some emails and questions, so I'm just gonna ask them one by one.
All right, you gotta speak up, Jay. We can't hear you.
Okay. So here are some questions. The first one is from Jacob, North Carolina. His question is, do you do commercial real estate investing? Why or why not?
Okay, so no, I've traditionally been a single family home guy, right? So most of my portfolio was built on the single family home. And like every single family home guy, we had dreams of going to commercial. I had some concerns about that prior to COVID, and that maybe commercial was a little bit overpriced. It had been bought consistently for the last 8 or 9 years. So I personally in my career stayed out of commercial and expected to get into commercial on the next cycle. Single family homes, particularly in America, were the big driver in an economic, really world economic catastrophe in 2008 and 9. Commercial, and not just the United States commercial now, but like really commercial around the world, might be redefined by COVID virus. So maybe people don't have to go to work as much as they thought. Maybe remote working will become more popular, and square footage won't be taken as much. Plus, you get, people have been cooped up in their apartment buildings, and people are moving out of apartments in the inner cities right now all over the United States. So, all right, Jay, I missed the name on that. I can't go back to it, but I would be weary of commercial, and I think the verdict is out. And if the market crashes in commercial, that of course might create life-changing opportunities in commercial. But if I haven't done commercial yet, I would be very weary of commercial today.
Cool. Jacob, there's your answer. So next question, Raj from Providence. What are some important lessons you have learned in your real estate career?
Integrity counts would be the one I say. So, when you're a real estate investor, basically you're not in the room unless there's a problem. And so you're constantly solving problems. And sometimes it's a contractor problem, sometimes it's a title problem, sometimes it's a family problem, sometimes it's a money problem, but you're always solving a problem. And you have to have team members that have good integrity, because things go wrong all the time. And you need to have people that their word counts, whether that be a contractor, a money lender, fellow investor. I would say that you need to have great integrity in what you do. And that's the only way to survive in the business.
Is that directed at me?
Is it directed at you? No, Jay, it's not directed at you.
Okay, cool.
We got an echo coming from you, though, Jay. We got a big one. Big echo coming from us.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're good. All right, what else you got? All right. I'm being offered a turnkey investment. Should I turn it down? Is it worth it? I don't know. That's a really hard question. So there have definitely been some good turnkey businesses in America, but I think there's definitely been some really bad ones. I personally don't own rental properties that I cannot drive to in like 45 minutes. And even 45 minutes is kind of on my outside range. And I know it's difficult enough to manage and control from that close a range. The idea that I would totally understand real estate in a secondary market that I didn't know, even with what I would think is a fair amount of experience on my part, I don't know that I'd be comfortable going and doing that. Don't get me wrong, there's some great turnkey opportunities, particularly if you're in California and you get negative cash flow. Going to the Midwest for a turnkey could be an option for you. The only one I've seen really do it well is Good Success, and I think they're a great organization for turnkeys. But all right, so I'll just throw that out there for Good Success. But I don't know, it's a tough thing to do. Go in wide, eyes wide open. You need to put your eyes on your rentals. We lost you, Jay. Now you're back.
Okay. I was just going to say, do you remember we received a turnkey investment and we had the worst experience with that property?
Yeah, so that was a turnkey local, right? Where we bought that one. And Jay, I know you're talking about a property that we dealt with last year where you were involved with that the property as the property manager at the time, but we bought one even locally from a landlord who was telling us that they were collecting rent, and we bought it. And as soon as we bought it, of course, there were a ton of problems. But I think the question was geared more like a business that sells it turnkey. Like they renovate it and they sell it. They put the tenant in, they manage them. There's a lot of like Memphis Invest is one of them. There's some out. I can't remember the one out in Arizona. And then up there in Michigan is Good Success. So there are a bunch of them around the country that do it. I'd like to see it, though. I'd like to put my eyes on it. Even, Jay, when we saw it, right, we put our eyes on it, it was still really tough, right? It wasn't easy.
That's right. Yeah, it was really tough.
All right, I'm booting you. How do I kick you? Oh, look at that. Oh, I can remove Jay. Look at that. Jay, you're echoing big time. So when they teach me, he's back in. Okay. He's back in. Jay, I kicked you out. You came back
I have the main access. So
Jay is the producer. Okay, Jay, we got to make sure we stay on track here, though. All right. Because I wanted to talk about a little bit tonight. I wanted to talk about what to do right now with other people's money and how to invest without using any of your own money. All right. So I want to make sure I talk about that for a couple minutes. I was listening to a podcast and I can't remember who it was, but I thought they said something really smart, which was the time to raise money is when you don't need it. And so that made a lot of sense to me, right? You don't want to have to go out and try to get capital when you need it, because then you pay higher terms and you're kind of stressed on it. So being that I'm not really buying a lot of houses right now, kind of waiting to see what the economy does. I kind of spoke about that a bunch of times. Then now's a good time to maybe go out and look at my investors and to get more investors and to get a bigger portfolio. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about how I leverage other people's money and how that really works and what that has done for myself and my business. And I'm gonna wrap it in there because I was going to talk about the Burr model at the end, but Jay and I kind of rambled on for a good 15 minutes. So I'll just kind of mush the two because I'm trying to stay under 30 minutes, right? So, okay, so people ask me this. Well, I get a common objection why they can't be a real estate investor, and people say they don't have the money to do it. Well, I promise you that's a misnomer. You can and should buy real estate with other people's money. And so I kind of have this argument with people at times, and people who hey, I have the money and I can buy the house with cash and I can do the renovation with cash, and I don't need to have the expense of other people's money as one of my budget items on my flip or my renovation. And so I've kind of had that argument with investors for years. And I'm firmly on the side that even if you give up some profit in your deal, you should always use other people's money in real estate instead of yourselves. There's a bunch of reasons for that, but number one is you have to have a model which basically consists of redirect there. I asked myself one day, I said, okay, Rich, if money wasn't an issue, how many homes could I buy? And the answer became, well, I could buy all of them, right? So by eliminating money as an obstacle into my business, it allowed scalability, right? Where I didn't have my own money, so no matter how much you have, it's a finite amount. So if you want to buy one home a month or two home a month or three home a month, that gets really expensive really fast, right? And so to be able to scale in your business, other people's money has to be part of the strategy. And so there's the scalability of other people's money that's extremely important. I also think that highly undervalued is the experience of the other people's money. So if you haven't borrowed a lot of money, if you're a fairly new investor, I would encourage you to make sure that you borrow money from either a hard money lender your first time on a flip or someone with a tremendous amount of experience on flipping homes. And I'll tell you why. Yes, you'll pay a higher interest rate. Yes, it'll be more expensive, but you're going to basically have a partner in that deal. You're going to have someone who's experienced putting the money out, and they're likely not going to put the money out if they don't think they can get it back. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of people lose perspective of that, right? So a lot of people say, I only want to pay 10% of my money or 15% of my money, whatever it is. Anyway, if you're a new investor, you should use other people's money for a couple reasons. One, it allows another experienced person to be in the deal. Even if you're an experienced investor and you're flipping a lot of homes, what I like to do is I like to make sure I have a big pile of cash on the sideline so that when there's a problem, I can come solve it with my cash. I don't know. Has anybody ever had a construction job go over? Right? Has anybody had a house not quite sell for what they thought it would sell for? Right? Has anybody ever had a project that maybe take just a little bit longer than you thought? Right? So all those things happen in real estate investing. And if you use your own money in the deal while you're not paying interest, now you don't have a backup money supply to solve a potential problem. I actually one time, and I don't mean to do a nightmare story, but I had a project that went over budget $125,000. Can you imagine such a thing? $125,000. So if I didn't have my own money on the sideline to back that situation up, I would have had to gone to my lender. I would have had to renegotiate that loan. I would have soured the relationship with my lender, because the last thing you want to do is go back and ask for money. It would have been a bad situation. So I'm always an advocate of using other people's money. And I want to just kind of throw in there like what the 10-year treasury bond is doing at the moment. So it's like at an all-time low, at like you basically borrow $1 million and pay it back in 10 years and pay a 0.556 interest rate on it, like with a US 10-year treasury bond. So if you know someone who has money in the bank, they're not making any money at all because the banks aren't making any money at all. And in real estate investing, you can give a much better percent. So like when we saw the market crash in March and it fell like close to 20%, I don't remember my numbers anymore. I know it started out at like 29 and it fell below 20. So it fell huge, but it didn't even fall 25%. And most of the time when you're borrowing money, you're borrowing at a loan to value of like 65 to 70%. So it is built in that you protect the money, maybe even a little bit better than the market. So learning how to borrow money, and particularly borrowing other people's money, is one of the crucial aspects of being successful in the business. And it was the day I kind of learned, like, you know, I've never been the prom king, right? But as far as moving money, I realized one day that I can move money and at a rate of like 8, 9, 10% and still make a very good return for myself. And like there were people like knocking down the door, as long as you had good integrity, right? As long as you paid everybody back all the time, the people would lend you that money all day long and be happy for you to move the money for them. So learning other people's money is one of the crucial things to the success in this business. You know, just a real brief story. The first time I got my first private money lender was actually from a neighbor around a campfire. We were arguing about property taxes, and like this neighbor wasn't even in the conversation. They were just on the sidelines. And I said, hey, at the time I owned like 12 properties, and he said, hey, I own 12 properties and I support the tax increase because it supports the school. It's better than the restaurant tax, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, having a conversation with a buddy. The next day, I get a call from someone else by that campfire and says, hey, you know, I've been wanting to flip houses for a long time. I've had this money sitting in the account, and I really haven't gotten around to ever flipping those houses. Would you be willing to borrow the money from me? Yes. Yes, I did, right? And that's the first way I found money. And it was literally just going out and talking about my life in my community with my family and friends. And you'd be surprised at how many people want to move that money at like 8, 9, 10%, something like that. So anyway, we don't have any questions. Like, Jay, you had some questions in here, but like I haven't seen any questions in the chat. Maybe the chat's not hooking up for questions. I'm not sure where it is, but if you have any questions about other people's money, like what does that really mean? Make sure you visit my website, richlennon.com. I got a ton of videos. I got to talk about like my journey and how I found private money and what I used it for. And I'll say this, because I was going to say, I said I'd tie it all together, but I'm really concerned about the BRRRR model in the next couple of years. Now, it's no joke when I say that I've bought 70 or 80 homes. I was thinking about the other day on just the BRRRR model with the idea that I'm going to buy, renovate, rent, and refinance. I'm going to do that. So I've built a fair amount of my business model on the BRRRR model. And so you certainly don't want to knock that model. I love it. Can't wait to go back for it. But I think it's in trouble for the next couple of years. And here's why. I've seen banks dry up their lending on the commercial single-family residentials. And I try to keep my pulse on local banks in my Richmond area, but I also have a bunch of friends that kind of live all over the country, and they all kind of keep me informed about what's going on in their market. And I'm seeing a universal trend, which is that banks are being reluctant, probably as a knee-jerk reaction to things that happened in 2009, but there's a knee-jerk reaction not to lend money on the commercial side and allow people to refinance. Your best bet is a local bank, You're not going to find Wells Fargo, Bank of America. They've really dried up all that stuff right now. So your best bet is a local commercial bank. But the idea of doing the BRRRR model is something that you really need to think about, and you really need to make sure that you have a bank that is committed 6 months from now in a world of unemployment and tightening of equity and an environment that is not as it was in 2019, where basically anybody could walk in and get a loan. Anyway, the BRRRR model is in a lot of trouble coming up. I've adjusted my model accordingly of I'm not depending on the BRRRR model. And one of the ways I'm doing that is instead of taking a 6-month loan on my traditional buy and refinance model, I'm more now interested in a 2-year loan of where instead of paying, call it, my 10% interest that I was buying to buy it and renovate it and then rent it and then refinance it, I really want to borrow that money at 6 or 7%, right? Because I'm anticipating difficult economic times. So I go to my lender and say, listen, not only do I want to borrow it for a longer period of time, I want to borrow it for half a rate, right? So it takes good relationships. But what I give them there is I say, okay, when I refinance, when that 2-year window ends in my mind of, hey, I do think that banks will get back to liquidity. I do think cycles are real. I do think we'll get back to a market in which it supports the BRRRR model. Then I'll refinance. And oh, by the way, I'm going to give you a piece of that refinance, right? Or if I sell it, I'm going to give you a piece of that sell. So yes, you're going to cash flow your 6 or 7%. Hey, by the way, it's way better than the bank, and it's way better than what the stock market's going to do over the next year and a half, although maybe not at this exact moment. But you're going to give them a pretty good opportunity to cash flow at 6 or 7%, and then give them a window where maybe they can catch that back 3 or 4% that they were looking for, but you get it on the refi, right? So you don't have to come out of that money out of your pocket. So your day-to-day cash flow through a difficult economic time is better, right? Does that make sense? So anyway, so that was my trying to find some value add things I wanted to talk about tonight. I want to talk about the importance of finding money, the importance of finding money now, right? And right after that stock market crash is coming, because that's coming. I'm not a stockbroker, but that's coming. And when that happens, you need to be prepared with your friends and your family. You need to give them another alternative about where to put their money, because people's patterns will change, right? If you lose a lot of money in the market, it might chase that money out of the market, and people might look for other ways to invest. And I still think real estate is the number one way for us small individuals trying to move maybe a couple $100,000, maybe a couple $1 million. That's the best way for us to move those types of small amount of money. Still the best way to grow wealth. All right, Jay, I don't see any questions. I talk every Tuesday and right there. Look at Jay, just threw that up there. Thank you, Jay. I talk every Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6:30 to when people stop asking questions, but I don't really see any questions there. So Tuesday, I try to talk about real estate investing specific. And then on Thursdays at 6:30, I talk a lot about virtual assistants. So a huge part of my business success has been using virtual assistants. We really call them virtual experts. We have a unique way of finding the virtual expert. We have a unique way of putting them into our team and training them. But these people really make real decisions in my business, like buy decisions, sell decisions. They make real decisions for me. And I just think that people don't use them as well as they could. So anyway, we talk about that on Thursdays at 6:30. Jay, help me out here. I'm floundering. You got any other questions for me?
Yes, I do have a few questions.
All right.
So this is a really important question. This is from John, who's from Los Angeles. And what do you do in case of mold? Am I in trouble because my tenant reported mold in the house and is feeling sick?
I mean, that's a tough question, John. So number one, take it seriously. So mold it used to be a really hotbed item maybe 10 years ago. I think that's cooled down a little bit. Kind of like asbestos was a big hot item like 20 years ago, and that cooled down a little bit. But you need to take it seriously. But I'll tell you this, that a lot of people mistake black mold for just common mildew. And most of the time, unless you've had a major water leak go unchecked for a long period of time, you're likely looking at mildew instead of mold. So what I do in this case is I use a company, and locally in my market, it's called Refreshen, but I guarantee it's in every market. And what this is, it's a mold company that tests for mold, but oh, by the way, does not offer remediation services. And I'm going to tell you that's important. So you want them to come in, and you should have them come in and have them test for mold. It's likely mildew, but you want to find out if it's mold. If it's mold, I think you'll find out that nowadays there's some pretty common chemical items, like even in Home Depot and Lowe's, that you can spray on that and treat the fungus, and then have the inspector come back in and make sure that you properly treated it. Now, if you have like colonies of hanging mold, that's a totally different issue, but I doubt you have that. You probably have a situation with a little bit of mildew. Go get it professionally tested. I think I pay around $100 for the test, and I think I get it back within 24 hours. It's certainly useful, whether for tenant or for crawl spaces if you're flipping a home on an inspection report. That's an important team member to have on your team.
Okay, great. Next question is from Rose in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Why did you stop the Airbnb business?
Oh, okay. So if you don't know me, maybe you don't know, I at one time I was running it was either 18 or 19, now I can't remember, 18 or 19 Airbnbs all in the Richmond area. And even though they came under attack by local Richmond City Local, there was some ordinance that like we're getting rid of Airbnbs. I got out of it 9 months to a year ahead of those ordinances. And the reason is because it was taking too much of my time. So I owned a fairly large rental portfolio that, for having great team members like Jay, I could literally spend 15 to 30 minutes a week on my entire portfolio. And while the Airbnbs made more money, man, they took more time. And ultimately, I just decided that I'd rather have my time than that money and that better return on investment. So for me, the answer was not to do the Airbnbs. But I know a lot of people that love them and have been very successful at them. They just didn't work for me.
Yeah, it was not very successful, and COVID really killed the Airbnb business.
It did, but I was out before then. I kind of got lucky on that one, right? I mean, I didn't have any Airbnbs by the time COVID came around. But I will say that COVID momentarily killed the Airbnb business, but the Airbnb business is back very strong, because basically everybody's tired of being in their houses, and with all the kids doing remote learning and all the parents doing remote working, actually I think Airbnbs are doing pretty well right now. It's just not the business for me.
I see. Okay. The last question. What other investment strategies do you suggest other than real estate? From Mo, Dallas, Texas.
Other than real estate? That's a tough one, because I do believe in knowing something well and investing in that. So I've always put money into the stock market. My wife has always put money in the stock market. And as a family, we've been able to build money through continuously putting money in the stock market. We do it really simple, like the S&P 500, and we just put money in that consistently, and it's a great way to build wealth. But to like really make the micro decisions, I really believe in real estate. And so I would not put my money in other things other than real estate, although I might diversify within markets. So as my lending abilities have increased, I've found trusted people outside of my local Richmond market that I place money with. and it's actually real estate, so I still understand that fundamental, but it's another market that gives me some hedge against maybe something happening in my local market, and I've been able to do that, but I don't know, you might have to ask someone else about that. Like for me, investing is in real estate. It's what I know. It's what I've been successful at. And yeah, I stay in my lane.
Okay, well, that's all the questions for this week.
All right, that's it. All right, we are, look at this. I like this. Boom, I can kick Jay out of a meeting. I can never do that during weekly meetings. I'm sure he'll be right back, but that's kind of fun. I'm sure I'll pay for that. But yeah, there you go. So, all right, Tuesday nights, 6:30. Jay and I were just kind of chatting around. We'd love to have some questions. Love to be able to like have someone pop in here and ask some questions. And then on Thursdays, we do virtual assistants, 6:30. I should give away one funnel every Thursday night at 6:30. Same channel, same Rich Lennon live channel, or the Simple Real Estate Investor on Facebook. I think we're on YouTube now as well. And streaming somewhere. Everywhere but Instagram is what I've been told. So anyway, come check us out. I hope everybody stays safe. Pay attention to the market. Make sure you understand that a switch is taking place and that we are now seeing an increase in inventory and starting to see pressure on demand. So I still think we have a pretty decent 3-4 month run of a strong real estate investment or strong real estate market. But I would get to know your local market, start to pay attention. Don't get caught by surprise. And make sure if you're flipping a house and it's going to hit the market in 6 months, make sure you put into account that the market might not be the same as it is today. First time that's happened in a long time. All right, my name is Rich Lennon. I'm a Simple Real Estate Investor. Thanks for coming out. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for being here.